Greetings, everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to our ninth meeting in this series that we formerly referred to as TRIG. This meeting is now part of CARB's Drive Forward initiative. And while this work group has a new name, which is Drive Forward Truck Forum on Infrastructure, I haven't made any changes to the meeting format. But before I jump into the agenda, I want to talk about Drive Forward. The Drive Forward initiative is about California not backing down from its goals to protect public health, despite federal actions targeting 3 of our Clean Air Act waivers. It started with Governor Newsom signing Executive Order N 2725 last June, reaffirming California's commitment to deploy zero-emission vehicle technologies to improve air quality, especially in communities disproportionately impacted by air pollution. It directed CARB to develop new regulations consistent with state and federal law that reduce emissions of greenhouse gases, criteria pollutants, and toxics. It also directed agencies to report to Governor Newsom with additional recommended actions to support zero-emission vehicle market development. CARB launched the ZEV Forward initiative in response to this executive order. This initiative was a collaborative effort between state government and the public to assess actions needed to advance ZEV adoption. The ZEV Forward effort resulted in recommendations that were submitted to Governor Newsom and published on CARB's ZEV Forward webpage last August. The recommendations focused on 6 areas: private investment, incentives, infrastructure, fuel pricing, regulations, and procurement of ZEVs by state and local government fleets, and included recommended actions to further light, medium, and heavy-duty ZEV adoption. The Drive Forward initiative is an important outcome of ZEV Forward. Drive Forward continues the state's commitment to meeting both state and national air quality standards, fulfilling California's climate and clean air goals, and protecting public health through strong vehicle standards. Drive Forward will advance this work by supporting the development of vehicle regulations, incentive programs, outreach and education, and complementary programs and policies that enable clean vehicle deployment. This effort will build on existing tools and resources essential to accelerating the advancement of clean technologies, including the work and outreach that we have accomplished through this infrastructure group. A strong focus of the initiative is collaboration across all sectors, including communities, public agencies, utilities, industry partners, and others. It is critical that we work together to develop programs that support clean transportation for all. CARB aims to listen, build trust, and inform and strengthen lasting partnerships that ensure public and stakeholder priorities are reflected in our work and that all of us benefit from the state's clean air and climate goals. So I encourage everyone to bookmark the Drive Forward webpage. This is where Drive Forward related activities and updates and engagement opportunities and workshops will be posted. The website also provides information on how to request a one-on-one meeting with CARB. And then also I encourage people to look at the web page that we developed specifically for ZEV infrastructure. And this is where all of our past and future meetings and materials are posted. The slides and recordings of this meeting will be posted on this page as well. And then I'm going to pose really briefly to see if anyone has questions on Drive Forward. Just chime in. All righty, so let's move on and look at the agenda. So today's meeting, we're going to focus first on state and local government requirements of the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. And then after a brief Q&A break, our 3 largest investor-owned utilities are going to give a primer on how they plan for electrical distribution upgrades and the type of customer information that helps them gain approval to invest in grid upgrades. I've asked them to get specific on the information they need from fleet customers regarding their plans for ZEV adoption and charging infrastructure, as well as the avenues for early customer engagement. And then after the utility presentations, we'll pause for Q&A. And then after that, we're going to have a focused discussion with our panelists. But before we get started, I want to maybe turn off the screen share, Isaac, and have some of our new guest panelists turn your cameras on. We've invited 5 guest panelists from state and local government fleets to this meeting today. And I would like to just get a brief introduction, your name, your title, the agency that you represent. Anybody want to go first?
Leslie, I'll start. I'm David Worthington with the County of Santa Clara. I manage the Fleet Management Division of a Facilities and Fleet Department. We have a fleet of approximately 2,600 vehicles and equipment, and we also do work for other government agencies, which total 600. So we're considered a large fleet in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I can go next.
Cool.
Hi, good afternoon. Christina Marquez. I'm with IBEW 569. That's the Electricians Union. 569 is located in San Diego and Imperial County, so the whole southern border of California. And we work on the infrastructure, and we're the skilled and trained electricians. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
I can go next. My name is Gary Simpson. I'm a management analyst for San Joaquin County Fleet Services. We have a fleet of about 2,300 vehicles, and we're actually working on infrastructure projects so that we can meet the ZEV requirements. It's an uphill climb, and we actually wound up hiring a consultant to help us kind of map out like our plan to attack this issue. So it's nice to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thanks for being here. Who's next? Damon?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Damon Wyckoff. I'm the Director of Operations for the Calaveras County Water District. We're a small rural water and wastewater utility. We cover the whole county, so we have 6 water systems, 12 wastewater systems, a fleet of about 100 vehicles, all of which that where applicable are spec'd to be 4x4s. So I'm also the chair of the Energy Committee for the Association of California Water Agencies, and I've been working with Leslie and her team on ACF for some time now.
Right on. Thanks, Damon. Who's next? Bradley, would you like to chime in?
Good afternoon, everybody. Bradley Northup. I'm the Public Works Superintendent for the City of Carlsbad, California, here in San Diego County. City of Carlsbad has approximately 495 vehicles, various types, small municipality supporting a multitude of different services. And we've been involved with a lot of the TRIG meetings, work groups, outreach, and work groups for other state and local governments, along with ACF development for quite some time now. So happy to be a panelist for the discussion.
Thanks, Bradley. Stephen?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Piepenhagen. I'm with the California Department of General Services, Office of Clean Transportation. We're in the Office of Sustainability. We help electrify the state's fleet through the infrastructure. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. I've performed over 250 assessments at various facilities on the electrical side. And then as a project director, I've assessed at over 220 different facilities. So I'm very well versed in the electrification requirements required for these types of projects, especially regarding new services.
Oh, welcome aboard. I didn't know you had that resume. It's awesome. I might be reaching out to you again in the future.
Please do.
I think that's it. And so maybe you start your, did I miss any other state and local government fleet representatives?
Hello, can you all hear me? This is, can you all hear my audio? Because
Yes.
Yep.
I am Walter Yu. I'm standing in for Steven Stromberg. He had something coming up, just come up. So I'm filling in with him. I'm his manager, program director over at Caltrans for ZEV. And sorry, can you all see my video? Because I can't see myself. I got the link from him. Okay. Well, I'm here. You can't see my video, so just our virtual format, if you will. So I got the link from him. I'm filling in for him, but I am the program director for ZEV over at Caltrans. Many of you know us, Department of Transportation. We are currently trying to meet the state's mandate to turn over our entire fleet by 2035. So we have quite a number of vehicles, some of which are turning into EVs if you see them on the roadway. We are now focusing on the medium to heavy duty, doing our level 3 charging. And we are very rapidly catching up for our EV infrastructure to meet those demands for a lot of level 2, now moving on to level 3. And again, excited to speak with you all of you. And I see some folks from SoCal Edison PG&E. We have been partnering with your incentive program, so big shout out to you all. They have been super helpful. So back to you, Leslie.
Right on. Welcome. Could you do me a favor, rename yourself in that Zoom square if you're not Stephen? Thank you. That's going to help me out a lot.
Certainly.
I'm not going to remember. So Adil, I think it's time for you. Maybe Isaac, can you share your screen, get going on our very first presentation. And I'm going to introduce Adil Mahmood. He's a staff air pollution specialist, and he's leading our state and local government fleet outreach efforts. So take it away, Adil.
Thanks so much, Leslie. I work in the Compliance Assistance and Outreach branch here at the California Air Resources Board, working with a lot of state and local government fleets to help them understand the different requirements and incentive programs we have. And today I'll be giving an overview of the state and local government fleet requirements for the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation. Next slide, please. So a brief update on the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation. Amendments to the ACF regulation were recently adopted, which would repeal parts of the regulation applying to federal or private fleets, including requirements for drayage trucks. The amendments are expected to be effective before January 2027. The state and local government fleets portion of ACF would remain subject to amendments under AB 1594, which preserve CARB's authority to provide added flexibility for most public agency utilities. Consistent with its mission to reduce air pollution and protect public health, CARB encourages all fleets to continue reducing emissions, and we look forward to partnering with you in these efforts. Next slide, please. The ACF requirements apply to state and local government agencies, meaning city, county, public utility, special district, local agency or district, and any department, division, public corporation, or public agency of the state of California. Any state or local government agency in California that owns, leases, or operates one or more vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 8,500 pounds would be subject to the regulation. Next slide, please. There are some excluded vehicles. This would include school buses as defined in the California Vehicle Code, Section 545, emergency vehicles defined in the California Vehicle Code, Section 165. And I understand that many different types of vehicles may be used during emergencies, but only those that meet the definition in the California Vehicle Code are exempt. Vehicles awaiting sales, military tactical vehicles, historical vehicles, dedicated snow removal vehicles, certain two-engine vehicles, heavy cranes, transit vehicles subject to the Innovative Clean Transit Regulation, and vehicles subject to the Zero Emission Airport Shuttle Regulation. Next slide, please. The default compliance option is known as the ZEV purchase schedule. It requires that in starting 2024, 50% of purchases be zero-emission vehicles or near zero-emission vehicles. That means that the other half can be combustion-powered until 2027. Starting in 2027, all purchases made would need to be zero emissions or near zero emission vehicles. And 2035 and earlier near zero emission vehicles, which are vehicles that can achieve minimum all electric range, thinking of plug-in hybrid vehicles here, can be purchased equally to full zero emission vehicles. However, agencies in the designated counties highlighted here in red remain exempt from the zero emission purchase requirements until 2027, That also applies to fleets or agencies that have 10 or fewer vehicles. Please note that agencies in the designated counties or those that have 10 or fewer vehicles must still report. Next slide, please. So amendments to the ACF. I'm sorry, previous slide, please. Yeah. So amendments to the ACF regulation were recently approved by the board and are expected to be effective before 2027. This slide looks very similar to the previous slide, but I'd ask you to take a look at the dates right above those arrows. The amendments extend the 50% purchase requirement by 3 years and delay the 100% ZEV purchase requirement to 2030. Extending the exemption for small fleets and designated low population counties until 2030. And also that will be, it is expected to be effective before 2027. Next slide, please. So fleets must report to the truck regulation upload compliance and reporting system, also known as truckers. The initial reporting deadline was April 1st, 2024, and annual reporting is required with a deadline of April 1st until 2045. Fleet changes that need to be reported within 30 days of occurrence include any vehicles added to the fleet, any vehicles permanently removed from the fleet, backup vehicles that exceed the allowable mileage, and vehicles that are converted to zero-emission vehicles. Next slide, please. Some considerations when considering the ZEV purchase schedule. It's important to note that existing compliant internal combustion vehicles can be operated indefinitely. There's no useful life retirement requirement based on vehicle age or mileage. Also, ZEVs purchased early or in excess of purchase requirements count 1-for-1 towards future combustion-powered vehicle purchases. For example, if you were to purchase 10 vehicles in 2026 when the 50% purchase requirement is in effect, but you purchased 6 ZEVs instead of the 50% 5, you would have purchased 1 ZEV in excess of the requirement. This would allow you to purchase 1 combustion-powered vehicle when the 100% requirement is in effect in future years. There are flexibilities available, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. And it's important to note that compliance is assessed at the end of the year and based on purchases made during a calendar year. And lastly, non-transit vehicles owned by transit agencies subject to the ICT regulation are exempt through January 1st, 2030. Next slide, please. The second compliance pathway is known as the ZEV milestones option, which is a more flexible approach available to state and local government agencies. Under this option, a certain portion of the fleet needs to be composed of zero or near zero emission vehicles. It provides flexibility to comply regardless of vehicle age or mileage. Once again, there is no retirement requirement based on vehicle age or mileage under this pathway as well. Zero emission vehicle requirements are phased in based on ZEV suitability by vehicle type, and fleets must meet ZEV milestones as a percent of the California fleet, which I'll explain further in the next slide. This pathway provides fleets with the flexibility to add new or used combustion-powered vehicles beyond 2027. Please note that the reporting deadline, if you opt to go for the ZEV milestones option, is February 1st. Fleets can opt in permanently in truckers until January 1st, 2030. Doing so, you must waive the right to statutory useful life for vehicles, which will also be explained in the next slide. Next slide, please. So here we see the ZEV milestone schedule. Once again, the ZEV milestones option requires that a certain percentage of your fleet be composed of zero-emission vehicles. This phase-in happens gradually over the next 2 decades as percentages increase as time goes on. The requirements are more aggressive for well-suited vehicles and delayed for more specialized or longer distance vehicles, as can be seen in the types of vehicles in the different groups. Group 1 contains smaller vehicles such as box trucks and vans, while Group 3 contains larger vehicles such as sleeper cabs or Class 8 specialty vehicles. As long as ZEV milestones are met, fleet owners have considerable flexibility with the rest of the vehicles in their fleet. Fleets can prioritize which vehicles they want to electrify and can purchase combustion-powered engines as long as they meet the overall phase-in requirement. Please note that though there is no requirement to retire vehicles based on age or mileage, fleets may be required to remove combustion-powered vehicles from the fleet in order to meet the ZEV milestone requirements. For example, if a fleet was to purchase a combustion-powered vehicle in 2040, it would need to be removed from the fleet in 2042. As you can see here, 100% of vehicles must be zero-emission vehicles by 2042. So you wouldn't have to retire it based on years in service or age, but you would in order to meet the ZEV milestone requirement. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates how the ZEV milestone schedule is applied to a mixed fleet of 100 vehicles. Here we have 60 Group 1 vehicles, 20 Group 2 vehicles, and 20 Group 3 vehicles. On the bottom row, we can see the number of ZEVs required in each year. So for 2025, this fleet will need 10% of the vehicles to be zero-emission vehicles from Group 1. So 60 times 10% is equal to 6 vehicles, as you can see in the bottom row. Skipping to 2029, there would be 15 Group 1 vehicles and Group 2 vehicles that are required to be zero-emission vehicles, and 0 Group 3. As you can see, the milestones are phasing in over time. And it's important to note that the types of ZEVs needed that are purchased to meet your milestones requirements can be from any category. So in other words, in 2025, when you're required to have 6 zero-emission vehicles in your fleet, they don't all need to be from Group 1. They can be from Group 2, Group 3, or Group 4, Group 1, Group 2, or Group 3, 2, 2, and 2. In 2029, when 15 Group 1 vehicles and 2 Group 2 vehicles are needed for a total of 17. Those can also be met with 5 vehicles from Group 1, 5 vehicles from Group 2, and 7 vehicles from Group 3. The percentages are used to determine the total number of ZEVs needed in your fleet, but your purchases don't need to align with them. Also, another note is that we use standard rounding rules. So 0.5 of a truck would round up to 1. Let's say you have 10 vehicles with a 25% requirement. That would be 2.5 trucks, which rounds up to 3. Yeah, I see. Can we go back to the previous slide? I just want to clarify, answer Ruth's question. So here you are correct. Starting 2027, there is a Group 2 requirement. In the next slide, if we go, this is the actual requirement here for the phase-in schedule. The next slide, if we can go back to the forward slide, yeah. This is just an example I was using about how it would look in each of these years. This is not a complete schedule. That would be on the previous slide. Sure. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the ACF regulation contains a number of exemptions and extensions. These provisions address a variety of circumstances, including ZEV availability, such as vehicles not being available in a needed configuration, vehicles operate at less than 1,000 miles per year, delays in infrastructure, whether that's due to construction or the utility needing more time to provide power, vehicles involved in accidents, vehicles under mutual aid agreements, vehicles not being available that can meet your daily usage needs, whether that's energy, or that can be calculated in energy or miles per day. Most provisions will require fleet owners to submit an application packet to truckers at arb.ca.gov to assess criteria. Please note that the recent amendments to the regulation would expand compliance flexibilities, and once again, those are expected to be effective before 2027. Next slide, please. The board hearing to amend the regulation was on September 25th, 2025. The amendments would repeal parts of the ACF regulation applying to federal or private fleets, including requirements for drayage trucks. As previously mentioned, the amendments would extend the 50% purchase requirement by 3 years and delay the 100% ZEV purchase requirement to 2030. This also extends the exemption for small fleets, that would be those with 10 or fewer vehicles, and designated low population counties until 2030. As previously stated, the amendments would also expand compliance flexibilities. CARB is currently finalizing the amendments, and they're expected to be effective before January 2027. Lastly, details regarding the amendments can be seen on our website at the link seen here. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the ZEV Fleet email address here, zevfleet@arb.ca.gov, or call the phone number listed here. Thank you so much. That concludes the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Adil. And now if we could stop doing screen share, show our panelists up here, and we want to just give all of our panelists now an opportunity to ask Adil any additional questions that might be that you might have about the amendments. Also, for the members of our audience, we are going to be using the chat feature today to get questions from folks from the audience. So if you have any questions for Adil on these amendments and the regulation in general, this is your chance to do so. So for panelists, just any questions, come off mic, raise your hand. Go ahead, Damon.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, Adil, I have a question about whether or not you can give us any insight in what you anticipate the changes will be to the regulation relative to exemptions.
Sure. And I'll go ahead and drop a link to the presentation that was given to the board on September 25th. And the link that I shared as well in the presentation contained draft language. Both of those sources will be updated. Right now, we're in the process of making further modifications, which will be released to the public as part of a 15-day package where the public will be able to see what those next steps of changes are and also provide comment. All comments will be considered, and of course, CARB will respond to them all. Some of the flexibilities, I guess it was the mutual aid exemption, I guess easier access to that, opening up access earlier access to the daily usage exemption would have different considerations that wouldn't make it quite as strict. And also considerations for using extensions and exemptions for fleet expansion rather than just replacing vehicles. So there will be some considerable flexibility. I can't exactly say what the final versions will look like as those are still under development. But the ZEV Fleet email address is definitely taking any comments informally now as well. If you do have any specific recommendations or questions, that's one place to reach out to the reg team.
Is there, sorry, just one add-on to that. Do you anticipate that the CARB will look favorably on? I know there's an early adopter focus, but one question I have related to early adoption is, What if the vehicle is not applicable to ACF? So like for a lot of the rural communities, a lot of the mountainous communities, they don't have a single electric vehicle. So if they were able to, kind of implement charging stations in, say, administrative vehicles, do you anticipate any flexibility within the amendments that would include those as credit for early adoption?
Yeah, the original amendments that were released did not include expanding the scope of
Right.
the regulation to light duty vehicles.
Yeah.
So I can't really comment on, if that's something that will be happening, but
Got it.
I think that's definitely a comment that should be submitted to our ZEV fleet team for
Okay.
further consideration. Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, and the ZEV fleet emails in the chat. There's also other questions coming in the chat right now. Adele, if you could take a quick look at them.
Sure. Yeah, I see. Was there any consideration on delaying the milestones option for the ACF milestones option? I'm not part of the actual reg development team, so I don't know the discussions that went on. I have heard that comment before, and it's definitely something that, I can take back for further consideration. Is there an anticipated timeframe for the release of the proposed amendments and 15-day period? Thank you, Dan. It'll be early 2026. And for everyone here, I'll drop a link in the chat for this as well. But if you were to go to the ACF main page on the left-hand side, you can see a button for subscribing to the ZEV Fleet Gov Delivery. And then that would make sure that you're notified via email about when those changes are released. But right now, early 2026 is what I've been told.
All right, we have David with his hand up.
Thank you, Leslie. Adele, there's the one web page on the CARB website with a list of the classes of vehicles that are not available. I don't see that it's been updated recently at all. How often will that be updated? Because we're seeing multiple manufacturers stepping back and not producing the vehicles that we need in the classes that we need right now. And we're hearing more manufacturers that are not going to release product whatsoever in the near future.
Sure. I don't think there's like a steady, like every week it'll be updated. It's more so when we determine that there is a vehicle that has become available or unavailable. So when we see that there's a need to update it. But, that list is not like the be all end all for ZEV availability. We understand that there's circumstances where a vehicle may no longer be produced, whether it be because a manufacturer is going out of business or just discontinues that model. So, we do encourage fleets that believe that a vehicle is missing from that list to let us know. And once we confirm that determination, we would make that update the list.
Real quick as a follow-up, that puts the state and local government fleets in a quandary because we're looking at that list to be accurate. If it's not accurate, then we have to go through the administrative workload to submit an exemption request. And the purpose of that list was to avoid that administrative workload completely. So the more frequently that can be updated is incredibly helpful for all the government fleets, whether they're state or local.
Yeah, and I do know that the implementation team is keeping an eye on, when vehicles are no longer available. I guess what I'm trying to say is if they do miss something, we would try to update that as soon as we find out that, there's something we've overlooked. But they are actively looking for vehicles in different configurations, or if they hear anything or get a new application that, lets us know that something's missing, we do work to update that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I see Lisa with her hand up next.
Hi, I had a question on the annual reporting, just for clarity purposes. So is that continuously on moving forward February 1st of every year, including for 2026? And then are you committing are they committing to one of the pathways? And if so, how often do they get to change those pathways?
Sure. So yeah, reporting requirements, if you're on the ZEV purchase schedule, that's the default compliance pathway is April 1st, and that's on an annual basis. If you're on the ZEV milestones option, that's going to be February 1st, and that's required annually as well, including in 2026. In terms of choosing the pathways that you're on, you have until January 1st, 2030 to switch from the default compliance pathway, the ZEV purchase schedule, to the ZEV milestones option.
Okay, and then I had one more just follow up. So I think we should come up with, tagging on to David's comments related to the list of ZEV availability. I think if we came up with whether it's quarterly or something, I think having something dependable and reliable that we can defer to would be helpful and a smart way to continuously get buy-in with confidence.
Thanks, Lisa. Bradley.
Thanks, Leslie. My question has to do with the proposed changes and the amendments that you provided in regards to the AB 1594 requirements for specialized utility vehicle. Can you go over some of the description of what are going to be considered specialized utility vehicle and confirm if all government agencies, if that specialized utility vehicle exemption is going to be included as an exemption for state and local government?
Yeah, so the specialized utility vehicle definition, that was originally going to be used for those extensions and exemptions to apply to them, but now those exemptions and extensions will apply to all state and local government fleet vehicles. So the expansion of the daily usage requirement or any of the other provisions, such as the mutual aid exemption, whichever ones were going to be edited just for those specialized utility vehicles, those will now apply to all state and local government fleet vehicles.
Okay, and so the operating criteria, though, that's written in the amendment is specific to state that a certain percentage of the requirement of those vehicles is maintaining public infrastructure. Is that still going to be a mandated all-term requirement, even though this is going to be broadened outside of a utility support factor?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, the compliance flexibilities won't be just for those vehicles. It'll be available to all public agency vehicles.
Okay, I understand that, but the definition itself is identifying, even if it is by, owned and operated by a state and local government, part of the operating characteristics of the definition of a utility specialized vehicle is currently written that it's greater than 50% of the time maintaining utility service. So I think that's where, if the definition of the vehicle itself is requiring a bit of an additional compliance factor in the definition of this specialized utility vehicle. I think maybe there's some clarification there that might be beneficial, or at least an FAQ update.
Sure. I know they have not released like the next version of what that will look like, so I can take that back under consideration.
All right. I think we are right on schedule here to move to our next discussion topic. Isaac, if you could bring up the share screen again. What we're going to shift over to utility discussions now, and we're going to hear from Pacific Gas and Electric and Southern California Edison on their proactive planning efforts underway and the role of utility customers in helping to inform future demand scenarios and the value of early fleet utility engagement. I want to highlight that while we have good representation from our government fleet stakeholders at this meeting, this message about early engagement applies to all fleets planning to electrify. We are going to be holding the Q&A question and answer series for the end, but I do want to encourage people to use that chat feature. If you have a question that comes up for this. We'll be monitoring the chat, not the Q&A. We'll be monitoring the chat, and we will be for questions that we'll have a Q&A session at the very end. I'd like to bring Thomas Boylan to the floor. One more thing before we go into these presentations. We have had a number of presentations in the past where we're focusing on just basically utility engagement at previous TRIG workshops, and covering like the processes and the timelines for service requests and the transportation electrification advisory services and TEAS programs, and their unique programs provided under SB 350 for customer side of the meter investments. And so we are dropping these TEAS links in the chat during these presentations, but we also want everybody to know that you can review the materials that we are available from our previous TRIG meetings on a zero emission vehicle infrastructure page. Specifically, meetings numbered 2 and 7 go into those details and go into the utility details pretty well. So from now, I'm going to pass the mic over to Thomas Boylan. He's a principal strategic analyst at Pacific Gas and Electric. And take it away, Thomas.
Sure thing, Leslie. Thank you. And thank you to the CARD team for the opportunity to speak here today. We've had a lot of work going on this year with our regulators at the Public Utilities Commission, working on how do we become as utilities more proactive in planning out our grid infrastructure to serve the needs of our customers as they need power. So I'm joined here today by Kim Douglas as well from Southern California Edison. And then we can sort of talk through some of what we've been doing with our respective organizations. Just a little bit about me. I'm, as Leslie mentioned, a principal strategic analyst on PG&E's Clean Transportation team. I do a lot of work with our distribution planning folks to reform and revise some of our planning efforts, our forecasting strategies. Again, trying to be more proactive, trying to strategically build out the grid infrastructure that we need to serve many of you all as you're thinking about and maybe under compliance obligations to electrify your fleets. So we want to make sure we're providing power when you need it and where you need it. And so maybe with that, if you go to the next slide, sort of just give some background on what we've been working on this year and sort of looking backwards how, what our distribution planning cycle looks like. So really the focus of this is making our planning more proactive, right? So historically, we've run an annual process where we take a statewide energy forecast that the California Energy Commission puts out. This is across all load types, not just transportation, but today that'll be the focus of our conversation. But we take these statewide forecasts and we essentially map them onto our grid infrastructure. And we look at where are we forecasting the need for grid upgrades over different time horizons. And we use that forecast then to justify investments in serving that load that we know is coming or that we forecasted is coming to be able to, to the best of our ability, reduce any delays in providing power to your sites. And so historically, that's been built off of a statewide energy forecast. And then we'll take what we call known loads or service applications that are already in our queue, and we can sort of forecast, again, where the grid needs are going to materialize, and then begin the process of performing the work to mitigate those. And so, as you can imagine, it's not the most proactive approach that has been historical. Over the past year or so, there's been an ongoing regulatory proceeding that is looking to establish a framework for utilities to take more prospective customer plans, community plans, things that you all may have, data that you may have that says, we know we're going to need to electrify our fleet. We have this number of vehicles. This is our projected power needs over a certain time frame. And then we can start to take that information. It may not be ready for an actual service request, but we can start taking that information and incorporating it into our forecast so that we can better anticipate these grid needs and try to get ahead of some of these potential energization delays. So that's really what the whole exercise has been about, is developing a framework to ensure that we're not making ill-advised investments, but that we have enough confidence to say that we have customers that have these fleets that intend to energize them, or electrify them, I should say, and we're going to need to energize those sites to be able to provide the power that they need at the time that they need it, at the quantity and magnitude that they need it. And so that's really a major change in the way that we've forecasted historically, which has been much more reactive, is we're looking to get more proactive. We sort of are, now that we're able to take this data and use it, we sort of have a confidence criteria that we can assign based on the different data and the availability of that data that we have. And so we can get to that shortly, and sort of what that data might look like. But really, this is, I think, again, this is a big change as far as how utilities plan. And I think many of you have probably heard in different presentations, engage early with your utility, talk to your utility early and often, and that's extremely still true. But now utilities have an actionable way to take this data and actually incorporate it into our forecasting efforts, into our planning efforts, to start making investments in grid infrastructure to serve your forthcoming need. And it doesn't need to be ready for service application. It can be something 2030, 2032, whatever it may be. Whatever data you have as far as, again, the size of your fleet, the location of the charging sites, things like that, that's all now extremely useful to us. And we want to be able to take that and provide actionable sort of investments that meet your charging needs when you're going to need them. And so really, all of this comes down to data quality and data availability. If you have your sort of forecasts and your sort of how you plan to electrify your fleet based on all the different considerations that you have, we want to know about that so that we can take that and turn it into something actionable and make investments ahead of your formal energization request, so that we're not on the back foot. We can actually start to get more proactive in serving your needs. So maybe just with that back, we can go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the specific data that is needed here. So again, the what, when, and how much, those are have always been the key pieces of this. But on top of that, so in the course of developing this framework with our regulators at the PUC, and I should note, this is still preliminary. We're expecting a final vote, hopefully by the end of the year here, to really solidify this into the regulatory text. But for the time being, this is sort of proposal and draft decision that the PUC will be deciding on. But these are the key criteria that we're looking for, again, on top of the when, where, and how much. But what is the design status of the site? Have you begun specifically designing the site? Is it more of a preliminary site design? That's very helpful in determining for us how confident are we that this load will be brought onto our system over the time frame. Same with the permit status. Have you identified the permits that you're going to need to pull? Have you submitted them, or have they already been approved? And sort of the state of that sort of permit development, or permit acquisition, I should say, really helps us determine how likely this load will come forward onto our system. And then the last is the funding status. So if you've received grant support, or you have internal funding sources, whatever it may be, have you identified them? Have you secured them? What is sort of the state of that funding, such that we can take all of this and apply the confidence criteria that's being developed with our regulators to say, we're highly confident that this load will materialize onto our system, and gives us further justification to be able to start building grid infrastructure to serve it. Even if you don't have all this information, that's totally fine. I think we have different sort of confidence criteria that we can assign to this that still enables us to look at, maybe it's not, building feeders and circuits to that site, but we can start to look at the impacts to the substation level. And if there's a large number of fleets in one area, we could be forecasting a substation overload. That can be a 5-year process to make those upgrades on that substation, especially if we need to expand it and acquire more land to do so. So there's a lot of different things that this data can help us sort of, when we incorporate into our forecast, begin to make actionable decisions and investments on. And so again, you don't need to have all of this information. I would imagine the first 3 are probably pretty straightforward, but again, work with your utility, understand what's available, and sort of whatever you have is helpful from our perspective, because historically we've not had a great line of sight on a lot of this. And so the more that you're able to provide to us, the more we can take it and really turn it into infrastructure to serve your forthcoming load. And so again, just with the caveat, again, this is still preliminary and it is still subject to change, but we're working forward on the assumption that to some extent we'll need this type of data. And again, you don't have to have all of it. The more the better, but there are still opportunities to work with your utility, understand what funding is available, understand what we can do to help sort of move your project forward, on top of just sort of giving us the longer term forecast to help us begin building grid infrastructure. So to the question that just came up, maybe if we can go to the next slide, speaking just for PG&E, So I think Leslie mentioned our advisory services earlier on. That is a really good conduit for customers to reach out to. And that's really just beyond this data transfer. And we can really provide that one-on-one support to help you understand, if you say you have a portfolio of fleet sites, maybe there's one that already has capacity available on the grid. We can prioritize energize or, moving forward with that one while we take the other sites in your portfolio, incorporate them into the forecast longer term. They can really help you understand, what options are available in terms of our Rule 29 offering and funding for to-the-meter infrastructure. We have flexible service connections that our advisors can walk you through and really understand how those charging windows might impact or not impact your fleet operational characteristics. So there's a lot of support that can be given through our advisory services that has really been a good go-to point for folks, and we're continuing to refine that offering, stand up, add more staff to it to support more fleet operators. So that's a continually evolving offering, but really that is really the key sort of source, I think, to not just provide your long-term forecast, but receive that one-on-one support. We also publish our capacity maps through our Grid Resource Integration Portal, or GRIP tool. So you can go on and sort of self-service, just look up an address. If you're in a PG&E service territory, look at your address, see what capacity is available on the distribution grid at your location, just to get a better sense of what capacity is currently available. We're continuing to evolve that as well. I believe we're in the process, or if we haven't already, integrating capacity work in progress and a few projected availability as that work gets completed. So we're continuing to modify and improve that tool and improve the functionality of it. So, but that's more of like a self-service sort of system as opposed to the advisory services, which would be more one-on-one support. And then lastly, we're working with EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute. They have a GridFast portal that sort of captures the same type of data and then turns it into more of a forecast that we're looking to use in some of this proactive planning as well. So that's a third-party resource, but we've worked closely with them to stand that up and make sure we're asking the right questions. So you can go on there. They have a whole bunch of other resources as well, but that's an opportunity to submit your electrification plans and just your long-term forecast, and again, how you're thinking about electrifying your fleet. And it doesn't have to be all at once, right? We certainly welcome, near-term electrification, but then also longer-term expansion of your fleet. So the point being is that there's a lot of resources available, and we want to work with you to sort of understand what your plans are and understand how we can support those and what resources we have available to support you. Chris, I see your hand up.
Hey, Thomas, Chris Shimoda for the California Trucking Association. Thanks for the presentation. So, the stage at which you're asking for the information from the customers, if I'm seeing that correctly, so that would be pre-contractual. So the data provided by the customer, would there be any sort of expectation around if the expected load does not materialize? Like, are there any sort of contractual agreements that are entered into at the time that they're providing that data? Or is it, sort of like this is before, all of that due diligence would be done on the project?
Yeah, so it'd be pretty contractual. These wouldn't be considered service applications. This is really, this is for us a long-term planned distribution asset infrastructure. And so I think there would be no obligation. It's really just, we need to know when and where these loads are going to materialize so that we can be more proactive in our longer term forecasting.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
We need to move to okay. I was thinking about holding questions to the very end, but I'll let you ask, Damon.
Thank you. I was just gonna add to that the last question, and we have some areas of Calaveras County that are challenged when it comes to reliable power, and the infrastructure is quite aged. So I was just going to ask, at what point do we kind of get in the queue, so to speak, to be able to deploy charging stations in the future, to be able to comply with the regulation? And it's going to actually take an interconnection application to kind of grease the skid and prioritize the project.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have your compliance schedule, I think that's extremely valuable from a distribution planning standpoint. If you know the years in which you're going to
Yeah.
procure and be prepared to electrify. That's helpful from us in building out the distribution grid. I think in terms of when it comes time to submit that service application, we'd have to get you in touch with our service planning folks that could give you a better answer on like the specific timing of that. This is really about, proactively building out the upstream infrastructure to serve that load when it is time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, because we have worked with you all on kind of developing how we would deploy the charging stations at our different service areas, and we're looking at 9 locations, and we have an idea of the demands of that we would place on the grid and whether or not there's energy available currently. It's just kind of getting to that next step is really what's going to kind of put the tires on the road, so to speak. So, how do we kind of connect those 2 dots, getting from where we're at now to the interconnection application submission, really is kind of what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think that's the exact type of topics that our advisory services is meant to cover.
Okay.
They can look at that portfolio of 9. Maybe there's capacity at 2 of them, right? We can prioritize those and get the other 7 into the queue for building out that capacity. That's really sort of that one-on-one support that they can offer, that those types of situations are right in their wheelhouse.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, let's move on to the next presentation. This is Kimberly Douglas of Southern California Edison. And I will just let her take it from here.
Thanks, Leslie, and thank you, Thomas. Thomas provided a great overview of our regulatory proceeding that is going to help guide our discussion and our future planning. My name is Kimberly Douglas. I'm from Southern California Edison, the Ready Grid team. The purpose of our team, we're a new team. We were just established late last year. And the purpose is to assist with that interconnection process, identify early where there are capacity constraints, support in any escalations, and also connect the dots for our engineering and planning team with our customers. So I focus a lot on external engagement, policy related issues or challenges, and making sure that, we are not saying no. We might be saying not right now, but we are serving our customers when and where they need it. Thomas did a great job of providing an overview for you guys, and I don't think I'll be sharing anything much different aside from honing in on how important the customer early insights are. Any and every point data of information that you have is really important to us as we shift, right? This is a cultural shift for Southern California Edison. As Thomas mentioned, we've been in a more reactive state where when service requests come in, that's when we engage and begin to ready the grid for that request. This shift allows us to proactively ready the grid and upgrade infrastructure before requests actually come in. So us knowing what is potentially coming down the pipeline, charging stations, new fleet requirements, allows us to put this on our radars pending load and initiate those upgrades within our service territory. Thomas has already explained the what type of information we need. If you have location, if you have potential load that you're looking at, that's helpful for us, right? Because we can scope that out. We can identify where there are already constraints. We can provide insight into where maybe a better location is, but we can also focus on building and enhancing the infrastructure. Thomas mentioned his energy advisors. Ours are account managers. So each type of agency or customer segment has an account manager assigned to them. If you don't know who that is, I can support in identifying who that individual is within Southern California Edison. My contact information will be at the end of this slide. I can be engaged directly, connect you to the appropriate person, or in addition to your account manager, myself, we also have local public affairs, our government relations managers who can also assist in connecting the dots for you. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about how to identify where a good location is. So we're talking about early insights. We're asking you to provide information early and often. Thomas mentioned the GRIP tool that PG&E uses. We also have a similar tool. It's called Distribution Resource Planning External Portal. It's an external facing tool, and I see the link was just dropped in the chat for you. But this is an external facing tool that will allow you to drop in a potential location going all the way out to, 4 or 5 years from now and identify, pre-screen where a good location for your site will be based on capacity overload, capacity constraints, or capacity availability. It's similar to a heat map where you will have like a map that's overlaying the circuits. What's red has capacity constraints, and you'll see even if you toggle from one year to the next, there may be upgrades that Southern California Edison is doing in that particular area, and you'll actually see the circuit line or the toggle go from red to green. That allows you to know in advance what are good locations that you can provide for us, and it also mitigates having to pay extensive or expensive engineering studies beforehand. So it allows you to get an idea of what would be a good location to provide to us, potential load. It'll tell you how much is available from now until 5 years from now. And this tool is updated on a regular basis based on our planning year. So it's a great tool that you can log into, you can play with, you can say, okay, if it's not this street, maybe it's this location, maybe I can go to the neighboring city, things like that. And, this is something to keep in mind is, and why early insights are so important for the utilities. If you think about a circuit, what it takes to upgrade a circuit or a timeline to upgrade a circuit, it's typically like 3 to 5 years if there is a circuit constraint, right? So if you know that your energization timeline is 2027, and you identify a location that already has a circuit constraint, we're already running up against some challenges. So providing the information when you have it helps us to identify, okay, this location is going to be inundated with service requests within the next few years. Let's get on it and let's proactively build out the grid. So this is a great tool to use. I encourage you, log in, play with it, change some of the toggles, and you can actually extract the data into an Excel spreadsheet to use for service requests as well. If we can go to the next slide. So lastly is our call to action, what we need from you all. Again, providing the projected EV charging or DER related load increases over the next few years is really helpful for us. Engaging myself or your SCE account manager is helpful, providing any information that you have so that we can start identifying pending load for future planning years. And also, if there are any changes, if you've already provided information and you anticipate that load increasing or decreasing or change in energization dates, keeping us abreast of all those types of details and those changes is really helpful for us. We put customers in the queue once reservations are approved after receiving the service request and a full submittal. So identifying changes in the load is really helpful to support all of our customers equitably. So the next slide has my contact information. I think Isaac will drop that in the chat. But again, providing whatever information you have in a timely manner is really helpful for us to comply with this new shift. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions.
Panelists, raise hands. Audience members, type your question into the chat. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So when we get our requests at our unit, it's typically an agency is looking to procure a vehicle and it's on order. So we're talking about a year or two. And so when we get our projects, we go out to the job site, we determine what the existing capacity is. We go through all of the engineering steps on our own, and then we determine what's available and what we can do. Now, if we start utilizing these tools and we just notice that some of these locations are, let's say, red or impacted locations, is there a potential to pull power from, let's say, a green line that's across the street, or are we kind of stuck with whatever is, let's say, bordering or serving that location? Generally, as a question.
Right. I guess I can speak just for PG&E. I mean, I think that, again, I'll keep singing the same song, but our advisors can really help work through that. There may be opportunities to draw power from a nearby circuit. There may be other non-wire alternatives, on-site storage, things like that, that might be able to provide supplemental power. There may be an opportunity to get on a rate that's a more managed charging sort of schedule that avoids some peak demand at the distribution peak that may defer the need for some of those capacity upgrades. So there's a lot of different techniques that are very site specific, but I think that sort of working through those options, that menu of options with our customers is really what we're looking to do. So it really does depend on the site, but there are some flexibilities there and some options that we can draw from. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to Thomas's point is that we are SCE exploring different bridging solutions that are available to our customers, still working out the kinks on some of the ones that are fairly new, but there are some that we are able to execute at this time if there is that gap between available capacity.
Thank you.
Damon?
Yeah, I just had a question, kind of thinking about, public fleets and emergencies and emergency response and how we work really closely with y'all out in the field. Do SCE or PG&E at all, are you guys looking at trailer mounted charging stations in any capacity to provide reliability during like a wildfire emergency or a flood or a storm?
Not that I'm aware of on our end, Damon, but I can take that question back to the team.
Yeah, just kind of thinking about if there's a challenge with energy availability within the grid, and you're working through this process with a public agency, and everybody gets caught up in a wildfire situation, and it's just a case of the infrastructure not necessarily being there yet. It would be great to understand that there was a flexibility in an emergency.
Just say for PG&E, I don't believe we're looking at mobile charging stations, but we have requested funding for mobile batteries that could be used to draw power in those types of circumstances. But it's a flag.
Great, thank you.
Lisa? You're muted.
Is there a change as it relates to the cost effectiveness and reasonableness for eligibility? I'll start there with that first question.
Do you mean in the context?
You guys have a requirement for POs with number of trucks, and then of course there's a cost effectiveness to the design, and of course the surrounding capacity in the project itself.
So this is really more about forecasting the need for that capacity and refining our ability to hone in on where that capacity is going to be needed. So then, once that forecast is developed using this new data, then we can sort of make decisions on what projects need to be completed, where the overload's going to be occurring. And then at that point, it's all the same sort of framework that has been in place. No changes on that end. It's really just on the forecasting side, getting us more line of sight into what we need in the future.
So then does that just mean you guys are just trying to collect data specifically to understand the needs associated with transportation electrification?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. And then on the current utility projects, just for whatever it's worth, because I know they're winding down. I think maybe one of the utilities already is sold out, but is there an available budget still? And then what is that cutoff for those utility projects that would still have a budget available for capacity and budget? Or do you have it?
I mean, so our capacity is funded through our rates, right? Our capacity work. So there's an ongoing budget that evolves with our rate cycles, and we're in the middle of one at the moment, so I won't speak too much on it. But that That funding will continue. We're also looking at alternative funding sources to get more, particular to these proactive projects, but no real info to share at this point.
Okay, so then I guess for clarity, didn't the current transportation electrification programs get consolidated and not renewed? And so as we move into this new phase, there's a winding down of the current projects that have, I think I want to say it's like summer 2026 for those that have a budget left. And then this would be the new planning process as we move forward. I just want to make sure I'm kind of clear between the.
Jumping in here quickly, Eric Carl with PG. I think we're talking about two different things.
Oh.
Lisa, it sounds like you're talking about the SB 350 infrastructure program to support fleets. What Thomas and others have been speaking about today are the processes around upgrading the planning to enable upstream distribution capacity, right? So it is the two different things.
Okay.
I just add that the challenges here, right, is just that historically, utilities have had very linear growth, right? Very linear growth where the future is easily predicted by what's happened in the past due to transportation, electrification, and other things. It's no longer linear, right? Which means the historical planning processes that worked for linear growth don't really work very well when it's not. So what we're talking about here today is how utilities and the commission are working to kind of involve that process so that the constraints around how we forecast what the grid needs and how we get approval to build it can meet that evolving need going forward.
And if I can just add, Eric, this isn't specific to transportation electrification.
Yep.
This is inclusive of all future load growth.
Yep. Hopefully that helps clarify things. I mean, with respect to
that does.
Yeah. For but to address your separate question, PG&E's fleet program is pretty close to being fully subscribed. I think there's still some budget allowed for a carve out on transit. I think Edison still has significantly more left. I'll let them speak to that piece.
Yeah, that helps provide that clarity. So thank you.
Yeah.
Bradley?
I thank you, and I just wanted a quick call out and thank you to Thomas for calling out the EPRI Grid Fast program. That is something that is going to be very helpful for all of us in making sure that we're communicating with the utilities and not necessarily one utility. There's a lot of our fleets that are bridging in between lots of utilities, and that ACT one-time reporting requirement that we all had lots of fun doing back 3 or 4 years ago is full of great information, and that's a lot of the same stuff that's going to be going and get reporting into the Grid Fast piece. So anybody on the call, absolutely, that's a highlight. It just got released. It's going to be a very powerful tool. I have a question for both PG&E and SCE as regards to public power safety shutoffs. And in this instances where we have state and local government fleets where we've perhaps created a depot or planning for a depot that is in the works. What are some of the things that the utilities are working around in regards to being able to not necessarily provide additional backup power in those scenarios, but rather ensure those circuits are protected during a public power safety shutoff event? Will still be able to support our emergency services or our ancillary services and being able to support events like that. At a certain point, public and state and local governments, it doesn't matter if it's a passenger sedan or a fire truck, everything kind of gets called into service in response to those events. So we want to make sure that we're not looking at a public power safety shutoff that's de-energizing a main service depot. So what are some things that you might be able to share with the group there? And have a follow-up after that.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, Bradley. I am not I don't work in the PSPS space. So I'd have to take this conversation back to someone on our wildfire team. I can't personally answer that right now, but I can follow up for you.
Appreciate that.
Well, and maybe I can help out a little bit because the City of Carlsbad falls within my service territory. Hi, this is a little bit of something that I'll touch on in my brief presentation later, but I think that's something that that's a specific use case. I think we're talking on this call generally about planning for infrastructure and sort of collaborating, bringing early awareness of when these, how you're planning for this EV load because it is such large load. But for something like that, it's a perfect example of why we want you to talk to talk to your utility early and often, and that's something that I would be happy to help facilitate a conversation with City of Carlsbad so that we can see how we can support your energization in a way that meets your operational needs.
Thank you for jumping in on that, Danielle.
David.
And I'll have one last follow-up. Sorry to jump in front of you, David. And in relation to your comment there, Danielle, about being able to support those, I think in regards to planning purposes, the costs associated with something that may need a substantial amount of undergrounding and planning for a specific site feature is important for someone to report on, right? If someone is establishing that I have a depot that's going to be supporting these types of operations in a remote area, knowing at what level does the infrastructure need to be resilient enough to mitigate the need for a public power safety shutoff? And is that something that any of the utilities are working to actively work with CEC to reduce some of the cost of something that may hit a Rule 20 effect where the cost has to be shared for undergrounding of new extensions and new service?
Well, I think for those scenarios, it starts to now we start getting into the technical parameters of each of the tariffs. So we as utilities sort of have to abide by that, what is allowable under Rule 16 versus a Rule 45 in SDG&E's case or Rule 29 in Edison and PG&E's case. What do the tariffs allow? What would be, what scope of your project would be considered special facilities under Rule 2, that, it's a special request or need of the customer. But then we are also simultaneously looking at our wildfire mitigation and how we can sort of minimize impacts to customers. So I think that's definitely every customer is a snowflake. So that's one that we would need to look at specifically. What is the grid capacity at your site? It's going to be different for other customers.
Thank you so much.
David.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that. Just all the utility providers, can you talk about AI? Because we're getting involved here in the South Bay area and most of the Bay Area with AI server farms that are going to take up a massive amount of energy. And for us as fleet, especially when we have 55 different locations we need to electrify, it's critically important for us to know what the future is as far as the local grid and the amount of energy that's going to be available. For me, I would like to know with a projected 5-year outlook of where AI server farms may come online and take up all the capacity in that area. Because I need to know that 5 years in advance before planning infrastructure. Because it's very complex, as you're all aware, very costly. And the information and the regulation is causing us to actually move forward quicker than we possibly can. And we're doing the best we can. So if you can address that, if there's any maps available to give us an idea of where these AI farms are going to come online, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll jump in, David. You'll probably receive this slide deck following our discussion today, but I mentioned our, what we call it for short, Dr. Pep tool. It'll include any load that is coming down the pipeline from now until like the next 5 years. That would include data centers as well. If data centers have submitted a service application and full submittal, then it would be reflected in that external facing tool. You'd be able to put in locations and identify where there is load capacity. So it won't tell you specifically like, hey, this is a data center. However, it will tell you if load is constrained in a particular area or if capacity is available. Great. And I think the link was dropped in the chat as well, David. It's a pretty user-friendly tool that I think you should take advantage of.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Seeing no more hands, I want
Using
to.
his grip portal is the equivalent of that as well. And I just also kind of add the nuance that a lot of larger AI data centers, those are going to be transmission connected. So they go around the distribution system. So it's a little bit different of a situation. So, yeah.
Thanks, Eric. So I think we're going to go into our final presentation. Daniel Weissman is going to talk today. She's a business development manager at San Diego Gas and Electric. She's going to talk about their Accelerate to Zero Emissions collaboration, the program they have underway.
Yeah, and I think, I certainly didn't want to duplicate sort of the presentations that PG&E and SCE presented because essentially I think the three utilities are generally doing the same things. We're parties to the same proceedings. Our distribution planning processes are generally aligned and the activities that we undertake to plan the grid. So I thought it would be helpful to sort of complement their presentations with something unique to SDG&E that we're doing on the side to try and just facilitate better collaboration at the local and regional level. So several years ago, I want to say back in 2019, we launched the A to Z initiative, and that is a partnership with our local governments, regional partners. We have a core team, a steering committee, and technical advisory committees. Our core team consists of the San Diego Association of Governments, the County of San Diego, City of San Diego, and the Air Pollution Control District. And then we have other municipalities and EV industry stakeholders and community-based organizations that have participated along the way. So if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this shows you sort of generally who's on the core team and then our steering committee members. Next slide. So the way we scoped out this initiative was we wanted to better communicate as a regional sort of collaboration. And since we're all planning for ZEVs in different ways, local governments have their community action plans. You also very much have advanced clean fleets to comply with. And you also have your adopted EV policies, whether those are for citizens within your municipality or if it impacts how you're electrifying your publicly owned property, parks, recreational centers, as well as fleets. And then SDG&E, obviously, we have a large role to play in enabling electrification, not just with our funding through our programs, but also having the grid ready to take on that load. So what we did as part of the initiative was to develop several objectives. One was to develop a regional ZEV gap analysis, followed by a strategy document, and then increase resources for the region so that we could collectively work together and serve as a forum to inform regional ZEV efforts. And I will say, 5-6 years later, I feel like we've largely accomplished this and are still actively working together. Next slide. There. So we published a gap analysis back in July 2021, and that identified sort of looking at state goals and our regional goals, what each municipality has published to identify sort of where are we, just inventory, where are we with charging infrastructure and refueling infrastructure for hydrogen, and establish some reasonable goals for 2025, as well as recognizing what our 2030 goals are. And so we established these goals and identified what are some of the gaps to achieving them. And you can access they've posted the link to the website in the chat, and through there you can access all of these documents. So the gap analysis is available there. Next slide. And then I think more impactfully, we worked together to publish in, I believe it was October of 2023, our strategy report. So this is how we collectively as a region, what are the strategies that we think we need to achieve zero emission vehicle adoption within our region. So not just increasing ZEV vehicle miles traveled, looking at equity and equitable access within our communities, increasing awareness and education, as well as workforce development, accelerating deployment of publicly accessible ZEV infrastructure, lowering policy and financial barriers is where we look at permit streamlining and what sort of programs and incentives we can offer. And then looking specifically at areas like zoning for commercial areas versus residential, and looking specifically at multi-unit dwellings, and then ensuring sufficient local grid capacity, sort of what we've touched on in this meeting, and encouraging fleets to transition to zero emission. So this, I think this is where we sort of documented what are the tools in our toolbox, what are sort of the strategies that each agency is undertaking, but we want to be better coordinated about it. Can we share knowledge across agencies? To understand how we're rolling out public charging at parks and recreation centers? How are we electrifying our fleets? What are the permitting barriers? Do certain agencies have adopted ordinances for EVs, et cetera? Next slide. I think. So this is sort of where we are with our objectives. So we've completed the gap analysis, we completed the strategy document, but we're not done. We continue to work on an ongoing basis. Now we're focused on identifying where are we with these strategies? What has each agency undertaken? Can we identify where there are gaps in how we're implementing the strategies, areas that we can improve? And so we still meet on a monthly basis as an A to Z collaborative. But what I think is most interesting, at least in my mind, is how now that we have sort of the pressure of producing these reports that, these goals that we set as a group, where my team is focused is how can we work with our agencies to better support them now, especially in light of the ongoing policy shifts, sort of the well drying out for funding, and sort of the lack of maybe the huge policy drivers for electrification. How can we continue to enable? So what I think some examples of what we've done, for instance, Caltrans, SANDAG, different agencies have come to us and said, hey, we have this project. For instance, Caltrans came to us and said, we have funding for medium duty, heavy duty charging. And we need to, they've got approved budget from the state, but they need help prioritizing where to apply that funding. Can we help them narrow down the scope of all of the sites that they've identified and help them evaluate those sites against each other? So what we did is we took data from them. They sort of gave us an Excel spreadsheet, and we did a desktop review of those integration capacity analysis maps, some of the maps that PG&E and Edison talked about. And we did a desktop review to be able to tell them, based on data that we have that they may not have insight to, hey, this site looks like it has good capacity. If you were choosing between sites, this one's probably a better location, more shovel ready, things like that. So that's one example. Same thing with SANDAG. They came to us. They're struggling to find land for public charging, but what if they identify a set of candidate sites? Could we look at those sites and help them evaluate them? So those are some of the things that we're doing one-on-one to better inform their decisions and collaborate in ways that are maybe not as part of a standard process, but more relationship based. And I can't remember if we have more slides, so please continue. And that's it, Q&A discussion. So. Any questions?
Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, this was very helpful. So thank you for that, Danielle. So I have a question. So just for clarity. So is this Rule 45 then?
No, this is outside of Rule 45. This is what, generally.
Is this a rule?
No.
No.
Just something that we sort of did on our own.
Oh,
Well, my
okay.
team is in charge of policy and regulatory stuff. And so I've got policy managers that are in charge of, state agencies like CARB, CEC, CPUC, but we decided we should have someone dedicated to local and regional policy and planning. And so is something we do separately.
Okay, so then maybe not specific to SDG&E. So is this overall presentation that were presented by all the utilities, is that due to Rule 45 or is that different still?
It's outside. So what we're talking about essentially is getting the grid ready before you even come to us to electrify. I think to maybe sort of put a cap on it. When we're presenting on our planning processes, when you come into Rule 45 or Rule 16 and you tell us, hey, I want to put this much load at this address at 123 Apple Street. The grid better be sufficiently ready to take that amount of load to avoid having to do a lengthy capacity upgrade that's going to delay your energization. So what we're talking about is better forecasting and awareness around the future load growth so that we can get the grid ready. It's I think of it like when you go to a restaurant, there's a fork and a knife. There's not necessarily a spoon or a wine glass because that's waiting. It's just we're putting the bare bones there that's ready until you come and place your order. And then you tell us what you need, then we'll give you the rest.
Okay, so thanks for trying to help me understand where the utilities are merging this new change that's happening between SB 350 unwinding and maybe more or less consolidating, and then we're kind of left to whatever's going to happen next with the CPUC. So I'm kind of curious in trying to understand the details on the CPUC requirements for transportation electrification as you couple it with these new programs that you guys are kind of modernizing to help us get there in the distribution side. Is there any rules like 45 or 16, 15, 29 that are going to continue to modernize how these medium heavy duty electrification projects will have to be supported by projects? And then I also want to kind of hone in if there's any available information, because another barrier to this electrification process has been rate design, right, and the demand fees. So I don't know if you guys have anything that you can expand on that, but as we try to put all of our tools in our sandbox, that's another element to these projects that SB 350 provided some benefits. And so I'm kind of curious if you guys are thinking outside the box too on rates as well.
I mean, so the tariffs currently are what they are. So I can't, really say whether the CPUC is going to change its policies on energization for EV specifically, but I will say that they have evaluated common facility cost treatment for electric vehicle load. And that's something that even most recently they've been looking at, but I can't say whether and how that policy will shift over time. Because in my opinion, we're sort of in a challenging transitional period just in general with affordability statewide. And I think making sure that we're adopting just and reasonable rates and not subsidizing one sector similar to NEM. So I think time will tell long term whether there will be additional subsidies for EV. Outside
you
of just the
probably
standard
answered that.
tariffs. We have Rule 45.
For everybody. I was thinking.
I fumbled through that question.
Yeah, you did great. I'm curious, Danielle, about the level of. I'm looking back at the slide that has your partner, and what has that engagement look like when it came to the folks, the state and local government fleets who are part of your steering committee, and also just the ability, the advisory group, and the ability to. I'm just wondering what that dialogue might have looked like, and how information and feedback through this process was accepted and brought into this model that you developed. Do you see what I'm trying to get at with this question?
You're saying with the A to Z specifically?
Yeah. What did that local engagement look like?
So it looks a lot of it boils down to relationships and just connection. I will say that we've had customers come through us via the A to Z initiative, like the County of San Diego, because we have an ongoing dialogue. But I will say, most recently, we had City of San Marcos or other agencies come to us because they reached out to their public affairs representative or their account executive with a question, and that's their single point of contact, and then they get routed to us, and I say, I'm happy to meet with you to talk about your project. So I think that would be similar for PG&E and Edison. I would imagine you also have dedicated representatives. So there are different avenues. I think the goal of A to Z was to sort of facilitate the conversation in a more structured and regional level, as opposed to sort of the one-off projects where, as an example, an agency's EV policies are varied. Some of them are MDHD, they've got to electrify their fleets. Others, maybe we want to adopt a new ordinance to streamline permitting for EV infrastructure. Can you help give us some guidance? Or it could be we want to offer public charging at our beaches. So very different angles that even I think the agencies are looking at electrification plans. So we want to sort of help all of those. But then there's sort of a feedback loop. We try to enhance our awareness, increase the conversations, have a sense of where that load growth is going, what is happening, or what the plans are, so that we can inform maybe programs and services that we offer. Those conversations don't necessarily make it to the grid planning process, because the grid planning process, I think, requires a lot more precision. So we're looking at different scenarios from that standpoint as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Gary, did you have a question or comment?
Actually, I had a question for, my question is for PG&E, but it's along the lines of what Danielle was speaking of, talking about engagement. Like I said, we contracted with a consultant, and they basically helped us to identify several high priority sites, and I guess the load requirements for like just the base level electrification. I was just wondering who would I reach out to like develop that relationship with PG&E? I saw something about the EV advisory services. Is that the correct avenue, or someone else that I should be speaking with to get some specificity? And we have a general plan, an idea of what we want to do. We want to get into the weeds and get into the nuance of it all. So who would we reach out to?
That advisory services, we have a handful of fleet advisors that work with fleets directly and then they have a connection point with our service connection team or service planning team. So those would be the folks that could get you in the door, work with your immediate needs, and then get you connected with the right folks depending on what needs you have.
Okay, so would it be like kind of a round robin thing, or would it be someone specifically that I'm dealing with who, we kind of build on, we have the initial meetings and we kind of build as we get more nuance in our plan and more specificity on, the sites and that kind of thing?
They can help you sort through all of that, sort of what's the right way to prioritize, where is their capacity, and where to start, where to grow from, and what need, then creating that sort of feedback loop that Danielle was talking about, of taking that information where there isn't capacity, getting it into our planning, and then we can start building that capacity.
Understood. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So for point of clarification, Thomas, that could be through the TEAS program. Could that also be someone reaching out to, if they have a customer representative that they normally work with, they would go right to them as well, right? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have a customer rep, contact that person and you can work with them as well. For those that don't, our advisory services, or really for anyone, the advisory services is the other key conduit. Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead, Bradley.
Yeah, I was just going to comment a little bit in the San Diego area for that the A to Z collaborative. The meetings that were held there were fairly lengthy, and we did have a lot of work group participation throughout that entire development period. I think the key takeaway, to Danielle's point, is a lot of agencies sometimes don't talk to each other, and especially fleets within those agencies or within those jurisdictions don't talk to each other. So if there's a key takeaway for emulating in your own district or your own municipality, your own area, your own region, and to that point, to what region may be affected by, SoCal Edison or PG&E, those discussions are vital. One, building connections, but two, building up the criteria for how fleets are operating, and there's room for collaboration. There's room for identifying consolidated sites that may be targeted in the future for a regional planning phase. So that type of a discussion, I think, is really vital, but it has to be regional. It can't be statewide because there are so many nuances in between things. But it was really helpful in, again, building the connections from a fleet perspective, a fleet manager's perspective, to the climate action plan folks, to the transportation planners that are all thinking about things that have to be brought into consideration when you're doing larger scale regional development discussions. So really, really, really helpful exercise, long, but definitely beneficial for the long run.
Awesome. So does anybody else have anything they would, any more questions for our panelists? Because I'm more than happy to go to the final slide and do a wrap up and let people leave early if that's the wish. Well, let's do that then. So maybe pull up that last slide. I got a few things to talk about. First, I've been kind of taking notes and doing a little bit of a recap on for today's discussion. I'll let anyone else kind of chime in if they'd like to. First of all, thank you, Adele, for giving everybody an update on the amendments to the regulation. And I'm going to also encourage you to use that email link that he sent to direct your questions and comments. In addition, also for the ZEV Forward, any one-on-one meetings, I think the key message coming out of Drive Forward is that we want everything we do moving forward to be very much a collaborative effort where we're taking in input from the vast array of stakeholders that benefit from and are affected by the next moves in the state of California as we push to drive to zero. Let's see. The other thing was I really appreciated hearing from the utilities about this new avenue that you guys now have available to you, other than what was traditionally available to help plan and forecast and get approvers for infrastructure upgrades, and how that fleet data and getting fleet data and getting information about the intention to electrify actually does really help utilities futuristic planning, even though you're not committing to a service upgrade. So I do want people to really keep that, all fleets on this call, anybody listening in, please keep that in mind, because you have new vehicles open up to you that basically say, I have a little bit of power in my hands right now to be able to affect infrastructure upgrades for fleet electrification that maybe you didn't have because it required a service request. And so I think that's really one of the key takeaways right here. And also, there are so many wonderful tools out there, those tools we've been tracking, and they do just keep getting better. And I'm talking about Dr. PEP. I'm talking about PG&E's Grid Resilience Integration Portal, whatever the GRIP, EPRI's Grid Fast Portal, and they all are looking now at pending loads in the pipeline. So that's super important information. And then lastly, I want to highlight and appreciate SDG&E's extremely proactive efforts to coordinate and collaborate and build these connections on the rollout and strategies for charging infrastructure to support ZEV. So looking at that very proactively to help spur adoption. So bravo, thank you everybody. Please raise your hand if somebody else wants to chime in on takeaways. And then next we have the 2026 Drive Forward, Truck Forward infrastructure meetings. These are the dates listed here that I've selected. We're sticking with the Monday afternoon cadence, kind of quarterly, but the dates don't quite march to a quarterly cadence because some of us are taking some vacation. And so we're going to be working around that. the March 9th meeting, I'm kind of excited about because I'm kind of a hydrogen geek. We're going to be looking at fuel cell refuse trucks and renewable hydrogen. And looking for, maybe I'll be looking to invite some of the fleets that whether your state and local government fleets that work in refuse, because we do see potential in using fuel cell electric garbage trucks running on renewable hydrogen that's produced from perhaps biogas or biogas digester gas, landfill gas, and the like. We just sort of want to explore with the stakeholders that are developing this technology, as well as folks who might be interested in using it. So that's our March 9th meeting. And then moving on from there for 2026, because state and local government fleets are the folks that have to comply, I really do want to add some SLG participants to this panel. Some of you have already expressed interest. Please reach out to me if any of you on this call today are interested in being on this panel. And I do have a number of folks on the panel right now that just haven't shown up, so I'm going to be removing their names. And that is about, one more thing. If you have any additional subjects for that you would like us to discuss at future TRIG meetings, future Drive Forward Truck Forum meetings, reach out to me or any of the co-chairs listed on the slide. And then finally, we have a new program out right now called Clean Fleet Connect. We're holding a workshop tomorrow. It's a tool to highlight those fleets that are using medium and heavy duty ZEVs to create connections for environmentally conscious businesses to support the state's broader clean air public health goals. The Clean Fleet Connect publicly recognizes fleets that voluntarily choose to align with the state's zero emission goals, but it doesn't establish new regulatory requirements. The link to that notice and how you sign up for the workshop or that page is posted in the chat. And so from there, I'm going to give everybody 12 more minutes of their day back. And thank you so much for coming. This was a fantastic meeting. I hope you all learned a lot, and we'll sign off.